Just two conscious guys talking, where conscious male leaders come together and have a discussion that is deep, that is nourishing, that allows us to see the illumination of consciousness that's unfolding progressively for men that are waking up in the world, and where you can get insights on your own awakening as a man, and also for amazing women that want to learn more about men's challenges and struggles that have created some of the dysfunction we've seen within men in its society, often called, quote unquote, the patriarchy and other terms. What created it? What is the genesis of it all? What can we do about it today to empower men to be all that they're meant to be and to support the awakening of consciousness for men and women and all? So, Danny, it's great to be with you. Yeah, it's just nice to see that you're out in the world talking about these things, about men getting aligned with their alpha and all this stuff. And I'm grateful for that. And I'm really looking forward to getting to know you, because we really haven't talked hardly at all yet. And I don't really know you yet, but from what I've heard about you from your wife and, from Instagram a little bit, I'm really curious to hear about your journey as a man and all that stuff, and see what kind of led you into the work that you do today too. Like, that's going to be fun. So looking forward to it, and just glad you're here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. My wife spoke highly of you and she enjoyed y'all's interview. So I think we got a good road we're about to jump on and go down and open up some good conversation. I'm excited.
Awesome. Yeah. So yeah, the men I've been interviewing, it's really interesting. We were talking about these, male stereotypes is the kind of the linchpin, kind of the one big things that we talk about again and again. There's some people have come on and said, I don't know if I really had that many stereotypes. And then we dive into it, and of course we find a lot of them. But then most guys know them right away. They're like, oh yeah, it's like this, it's like that, and everything. And so I'm curious. I don't want to color your, commentary too much at this point to start off with, but tell us about yourself a little bit, especially like right now. I'm interested in knowing, the kind of work you're doing, aligning with the alpha and all that stuff that you do, the aligned alpha stuff. Like, tell us about your journey, like, to getting there. Like, I want to start like from childhood. So to me, everything starts early. Like, all the things we did later were there early somehow in some way. So tell me, like, what was it like growing up? What were you dealing with overall, and then what, as a boy, as a man, or whatever, coming up, like, what kind of stereotypes were you running into? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I definitely agree with you. I think all of our traumas or things that we deal with as adults stem from something that happened as a child. And for me, that resonates so deeply. So just a quick overbrief is growing up, my mother was addicted to methamphetamines and alcohol. At 9 years old, I was putting a needle in her arm because I thought it was her medicine. I cooked and sold dope with my mom and with my brother all the way up until the age of about 17. Ran the streets. I did a lot of bad things. I was very independent. I grew up in an environment where I could not show emotion. And if I did, it led to further abuse. I was sexually abused as a kid, physically abused, mentally abused. So the environment I was in and grew up in was not safe. And then we fast forward until about 18, getting out of high school. I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I heard about the fire service. And real quick, how I got into the fire service, I went and did a ride out. And we ran one call that day, but the one call we ran was us doing a lift assist for an elderly lady. And when I went in and I helped this lady off the floor, it resonated so deeply with me because how many times I've helped my mother off the floor from being OD'd or drunk or something like that. And I knew immediately that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a servant. I wanted to be a helper in this world and help people in the community. And deep down inside in my heart, even though the environment I was in, I always knew my heart was pure and it was good. But I had to survive in this environment I was in. So that was always masked and covered. And I didn't get to really tap into much of that until about 18 getting into the fire service. So immediately signed up for the fire academy. Graduated high school on a Wednesday, enrolled in the fire academy, started the following Monday. I lived in my truck for about 6 months because I couldn't afford the gas or anything from the fire academy to the house. So Monday through Thursday, I would sleep in my truck behind the fire department, go to school during the day. And then Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I was a bouncer at a bar in downtown Fort Worth where I got enough cash so I could eat during the week. Immediately out of fire academy, I went into EMT school, finished EMT, and then I got hired upon completion of my EMT. So I started very early, started at 18 and got into my career. And I did it for about 15 years. And just last year, I recently stepped away from it due to our business is growing, being able to travel, and just being very present at home. What I wasn't prepared for is the suppression of emotions and the happiness that would be taken away from me that no one talked about. As a fireman, you hear a hero, you hear all the cool stories and all the glorified effects of becoming a fireman. But what they don't talk about is the things that you see, right? The traumas that you experience. So for me, going from that childhood to 17, having to suppress emotions, and then getting to the fire service at 18, again, having to suppress emotions because we're supposed to be the rock, the foundation on scene. We can't show emotion. And then the culture of the fire department it needs a lot of work because once you show the emotional breakdown or you ask for help, you're rendered a weakness. You're a liability. You're no longer an asset to the crew. So the culture needs a big change within the fire department. So over the years of being a fireman, I suppressed my emotions deeper and deeper. I took on drinking. I took on sex. I took on ways to numb out so I didn't have to think. So I would suppress even more. So a lot that came up for me was not being present, not being my truth, separation, right? And putting on masks just so I could fit in and not talking about the things that I really needed to talk about. And this is before I even started being aware of all my childhood trauma. So for me, I've always had to be that stereotype. For me, it was, oh, he's a meathead. You know, I'm 6'2", I was a 260 pound solid lean guy. So automatically when you look at me, you would think he's a meathead, gym rat, a douchebag. All these labels, societal programming has taught us if you have certain things, then you're automatically placed in this category. But if you talk to me for 2 minutes, 5 minutes, you know, I'm a teddy bear. I'm a huge teddy bear. I have the heart of gold, but I also have this switch that when I need to be in that masculine alpha state, I can turn it on. But when I need to be in that feminine emotional state and hold space, I can go there too. So that's what the aligned alpha is about, is being able to swing that pendulum both ways in a grounded, divine state and being grounded in your truth, in your masculine and in your feminine. A lot of guys are like, man, I don't have no feminine in me. No, we all got it, man. We really do. But it's being able to have that beautiful balance in both areas. So for me, over the last couple of years, and especially the last 6 months, 4 months, I've had the most growth in my entire life because I've really stepped back into that. I've went into the darkness and I confronted the shadows, the secrets, all the things that I was hiding and carrying because I didn't want to be seen in my truth, because I didn't think society would love me or would accept me. And what came up for me was a lot of abandonment issues, right? If I'm being seen in my truth, they won't love me and they will leave, right? And all that stemmed back from my childhood, as my mother leaving me and my father not being in the picture as much. And if I did something wrong, then she would be gone. So, and I didn't realize that until doing all the deep work and doing the emotional work and looking and actually paying attention to my triggers. And they all stem back from childhood. So if you're a guy and you think that, you're perfect and you got it all, there's always something that can be brought up. There's always more expansion and growth ahead. You just have to be willing to go into those dark places that we've not stepped in, right? Because we don't want to face the truth. We don't want to be judged. We don't want to be seen in that area. So, but I promise you, the only way that you become this enlightened person that you want to be, or the happy, stress-free person you want to be, is you have to acknowledge the other shit. It has to be a balance. And you have to be willing to go in and do the work, the deep work, not the superficial work, but the deep work. So my brand, the Aligned Alpha, that's what that is. It's a catchphrase. And when you hear the Aligned Alpha, you're like, oh, what is that? And for me, it's being in alignment. It's an alignment to both the masculine and the feminine, but being in the divine and being grounded, and coming from a very beautiful state, so to say. And there's been like you said, the stereotype of these days is it's the societal programming of the judgment. Everybody judges so easily, right? But can you love them exactly where they are? Can you love them without having something in return? And it's a life practice. It doesn't just happen over day.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Okay. That's awesome. I mean, all that you shared, I appreciate like you going like into all of it like that, and that like we covered a lot of ground quickly, and that happens a lot here. Not
Yeah.
always, but I like it when it happens. It's fun. But yeah, what an amazing, I most people haven't experienced, this types of things you've experienced. But then again, there are a lot of people that have, but none of the people I've talked to have been, experienced all those sorts of things at all those different levels. So I think that's really interesting. Probably there'll be more, but but I mean, I think what my point is, like, we're also alike, but so different, and all those sort of ideas come to my mind, like, because you're like, I can't even begin to relate to your journey on certain levels, right? I have no idea what that's like. Like, okay, I'm giving my mom like meth and stuff, and I'm thinking it's her meds and what she needs, and in a way she did need it, but it wasn't what you thought. And like, I
Yeah.
can't even relate to that. I mean, running in the streets for some reason, even though I didn't do that, like somehow I can relate to that. I do that vibe more so, but like, okay, I ran the streets in my own way, not with drugs, but I get I feel the vibe on that. That's really relatable. I could feel that. But yeah, so I just taken in your story and what you shared there. Again, we covered a lot of ground there. So, but yeah, I mean, what I really love is like, because of everything you've experienced, it just sounds to me like we see this for a lot of different people with intense traumas or backgrounds like that, that once like that moment of deeper awakening or whatever, we want to call, I don't know what word to give it, but in this case, but like when you're ready, like, yeah, you got to move through, like there's some numbness big time and everything, but then like, wow, like there's such a, like when you said these last 4 months, there's like such a hunger, there's such a authentic rawness to it, that if you haven't been as traumatized, maybe isn't as accessible, right? It's like, yeah, I'm trying to work on myself here, and it's like, if you're not in touch with those deeper like getting in touch with those things and really is important. And some people might, I wasn't too traumatized. I had an okay life and everything. And then we find them eventually, right? Like, again, we
Yeah.
dig around, we'll find it, especially guys, right? They're like, oh no, I'm fine. I haven't had any trauma. Yeah, my life was pretty good, actually. It's like we're already lying to ourselves. Like, I mean, I'm not saying they had a horrible life. I'm just saying like they gloss over, sometimes guys do that. I've seen a lot of guys that are like that, and men, women too, but just gloss over those things like they didn't happen. And then it's like, you gotta remind people, because that's how we survived, right? Like, okay, let me just, like you said, with the masks and everything, like, okay, I just don't see that. That's how we keep everything safe, because like it sounds like almost like the programming, like we can't we have time, we can't have time to be messing around with emotions. That's gonna screw everything up, right?
Yeah.
Like you're growing up. So anyway, so those are just some of the thoughts coming through as you shared all that. Like, I think it's so powerful, like, that you're doing this work to help men, because you have such an experience with all this, and there's such a authentic rawness and hunger there, right? That's so powerful, and so I really appreciate that about you.
Yeah. Thank you. And I think for men, jump back on trauma real quick. What is trauma? It's so subjective, right? So trauma is just too much, too fast, too soon. And anybody can or perceive that as, a child dropping his goldfish on the ground, his last one. And that could be just as traumatic as, a molestation for another child. It's how it's programmed and how it's perceived to the individual. So it's all subjective.
Yeah.
My main focus, I believe, is vulnerability. For me, what I view vulnerability as, and this is what got me into the work, is I'm not the most manly, masculine, it's again, all subjective, right? But I feel in my word and in my space, I hold a very safe, masculine container. So for another man to be able to step into my space, in my energy, and feel safe because I've shared some of my past, I've shared some of my traumas, right? And when
Mhm.
my walls are down, subconsciously, he didn't know he needed that permission. But now that I've opened up and let my walls down, that gives him the subconscious permission he needed to go deep and be vulnerable, right? So for me, it's holding the masculine space in a safe way for other men feel safe enough to show up, because men have it so hard in this world. And it doesn't matter how big and bad you are or what your image may be. It is, if you're a man, you cannot show emotion because that deems you as weak. And it doesn't matter what walk of life it is. That's just how it is in the society we're in right now. And the problem with that is we are humans, regardless of male or female. We are human beings. At some point, we are going to cap out emotionally, and then it starts overflowing. And that's when you come out of your wounded masculine, your wounded feminine. You're going to be insecure. You're going to start lashing out, screaming, physical abuse, like all these things. At some point, it's going to come out. So my biggest goal is to be vulnerable from a grounded masculine state or feminine, whatever container I need to be in to help and assist for another person to feel safe to be able to go in and do the work.
That's great. Yeah, that's great. So for you, like we're getting back to my original question, and we got so much more, let's dig into it a little bit more. So the big thing you shared is that you couldn't share your emotions, right? So there was no space for that. Growing up, and you just talked about it again right now with men, like that's one of the most common ones that we hear here is like, yeah, you can't show your emotions. It's like a vulnerability, because even amongst like, yeah, like even when we're adults, right? I already like, men rib each other, right? Like, oh, we got so like I remember, you get picked on, you pick on other people, right? Like that's what guys do, like a lot. Like, oh, I found a vulnerability. Let me rub it in. Yeah,
Yeah.
and then it goes, can go even go back and forth a lot. And we've got bullies. Like most people I've interviewed said, yeah, I got bullied, and there's a lot of different ways we could get bullied. But like I got bullied and I didn't even realize it. Like, oh, I guess so. It was like, again, it was like something that wouldn't have been such a big deal to someone else, but like you said, like there are certain traumas I have in my life that I'll never forget that were so traumatic to me as a kid. Oh, this kid tells me keeps telling me what to do, like to be a class clown and everything. One day I say no, and he's like he turns on me like I'm like he's gonna destroy me now, right?
Yeah.
And like that was bullying. Like I didn't even know that was bullying. I was just like, oh, this thing happened. I didn't even think of it that way. I thought it was helpful in some kind of way, then to see that as bullying, like, oh, I was actually bullying, and so I think and I wonder, like with that, like if that whole, like, maybe there is something where it's part of the like a secret men's code. We've got to be strong, so we're going to come at each other, and make sure you're strong enough. You've got a vulnerability. Let's see if you can
Yeah.
handle it or not. Are you too weak? Let's see. Like, so what do you think about that? Like, because that it seems so true.
Well, and man, some of the jokes and things that I've even said personally as a fireman after years, man, if you walk into a fire station, you sit down at the dinner table, the is a sacred place in a fire department. That's where all the world's problems can be solved, marital problems, friendship problems. It is a very sacred place with station because nothing leaves that table, right? So that's where everything comes up. But also, I'm just speaking from my own experience, from a civilian to a fireman or a first responder, military, police, like the way we joke would be considered very morbid to the average citizen, because we
Mhm.
see things, and the way that we are able to offload that, or the way that we are able to release those emotions, is commonly through joking,
Mhm.
right? That's a way of saying, hey, this is on my mind, and I'm acknowledging that little child that we just ran that was mangled in a MVA car accident. I made a joke about it, but what's the deeper part of it? The deeper part is, hey, this is on my mind. I'm thinking about it still. This is a way for me to express, to get other people to talk about it. And a lot of times civilians don't understand that, but first responders, if they're watching this, they're like, he is spot on, and that's just the way that we release. So everybody has their own coping mechanism. Some come out through laugh and jokes, some write, some journal, some meditate, some, out lift weights. There's so many different outlets for it. But a lot of times it comes through as joking.
Right. Yeah, I mean, to try to cope with things that have happened, like, yeah, I mean, how do you cope with something like that? In some cases, I do think some people have a constitution to handle those things better than others, for sure. Like one of my friends is a police officer for a really long time, and I'm like, he tell me about some of the things, I'm like, yeah, I'm too. I mean, I just think like I'm probably too sensitive. Like I think it would bother me too much. I relate to you when you say, probably other men relate to this, but like the switch thing, like I can turn on a switch and be like, okay, nothing, I'm impervious, I'm invincible, like whatever the job is that needs to be taken care of. All right, whatever it is, I need to take down 10 guys right now, whatever it is. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they're all like way bigger than me too. I'd be like, okay, they're going down. Like that's just the mentality, at least. That's the energy I'm in. And it's just like, and there's no regard for who's in front of you. It's just in that moment, at least. It's like you're all going down. Like there's no two ways about it. And then for me, it's like I'm same way as you, like I've got that but I'm very sensitive. I'm very empathic, I could cry at the drop of a hat, or if that, I don't even need that, right? Like I could get tearful, emotional about anything, like just thinking about anything almost. I mean, like I get really emotional, not super emotional maybe, but emotional about it. It brings up emotion. But that's not, you're like, yeah, it's not in the mainstream, like what I work in is a lot of spiritual realms and stuff, so it's a little different. But yeah, with other guys in mainstream, yeah, no, that is not something you're gonna be ostracized from that male tribe. If it's a bunch of guys, are gonna be like, what's wrong with that guy?
Well, and if you are, it just shows the emotional intelligence of that tribe.
Yeah.
And I feel that's kind of where I'm the bridge. And I want to be that bridge between the spiritual world and the very wounded masculine world. Because a lot of those guys that are in that alpha state 24/7, that don't want to talk emotions, that don't want to show that side of them, that's not sustainable. So I want to be that bridge. I want to show them that, hey, you can be that, but also lean into this part of you as well. And that's what the aligned alpha brand is about. It's having the alignment of both. So it's talking to those guys that are alpha, go all the time and they're masculine. But it's like, have you ever checked in with the emotional side of that? And once you do, and you're able to free up and acknowledge and heal, that leaves you with so much more bandwidth to work even further in the masculine, if that's what you choose. And then I have a client right now I'm working with. He's like, man, I just feel so much more better in my feminine. And I say that's fine, as long as you're able to turn that switch when it's needed. If your wife needs you to hold sacred space for her in a masculine, grounded, safe place, you need to be able to hit that switch so she feels confident to show up in her, divine feminine and offload whatever she's working through. If something happens and you need to protect your family, that switch needs to be turned on. It don't make a shit if you're in your masculine or feminine, whatever you enjoy more, as long as you're able to turn on whatever is needed in that moment, and you're working from a divine, not wounded.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, although the wounded could be the divine too, if it's aligned, right? So it's all kind of interesting in that way. But yeah, totally. Yeah, one of my mentors happens to be a guy, but he was like, when I've been working on, like, okay, like about 10 years ago, I was invited to one of these men's things, like I just blank out even on all these different men's groups, but it was one of the ones like, yeah, we're going to get you naked, we're going to ridicule you, we're going to make you feel like shit, and then you're going to get through it though, and then you're going to feel better about yourself and everything. So you put me in that environment, my Incredible Hulk's going to come out, and I'm going to want to just like kill everybody there. That's where I was 10 plus years ago, right? And then like I just felt too like I don't know, like I'm not as worried about me. Like I always said this, like I'm not worried about me. I'm worried like the beast is going to come out. Like that was always my fear. Like so I was always holding this energy back. Like if that comes out, I'm not sure if I can control it. I don't know if I can, you know, it wants to kill. It doesn't want it to stop. It just, okay, keep after them till they're dead. You know, like,
Right.
so that it is a superpower, but if it's unconscious, you know, it's a problem. So I ended up working on it on my own ways, I guess, in you know, various ways over the years. And, you know, now it's like I could go to one of those things, but I don't feel a draw to it anymore. Like it's like, okay, all right, so we're doing this stuff. But what am I trying to say is that it's just, yeah, being willing, like if it feels unsafe to be vulnerable. I think some guys are like so protective of emotions, like the Hulk wants to come out even if you try to go into their emotional side, right? So like I don't know if you've seen a lot of that with the guys you're working with too, but like it's like, you know, wait a minute, you know, like they're constantly protecting, like people are in the male alpha all the time. I really believe you know, all of them are still protecting like the wounded child, you know, that's what they're doing. That's why they're in the alpha all the time. Like they can't relax because it's like almost like a life or death thing. I don't know. What's your experience with that?
So I resonate with that. And again, like the aligned alpha, when I use the term alpha, it's strictly to get your attention. In my opinion, a
Yeah.
true alpha doesn't have to announce he's the alpha. When he walks into the room, you can feel it energetically. He's the one that is protecting. He is the one that's looking how he can help. He is looking to, you know, to advance in life. So you don't have to announce it. It is automatically felt. But the guys that are protective of their emotions, they're
Hmm.
that way because at some point in their past, when they showed emotion, they were made fun of, it was used against them. You know, something happened for them to build that wall around that. And that's where I go back to being vulnerable. If I can show up and I can release emotion, or I can show emotion that says, hey, I'm trusting in you, you can trust in me, right? And it starts off with little. They'll just give you a little bits at a time. But over time, and in that container, they feel safe. And that's when the larger things will come up. So, you know, the reasonings someone doesn't do something in life is because at some point they did that and something negative happened, right? So that's that attachment there. So if you can come into a clean, safe container, even if it starts off little small things, eventually it's going to grow where you feel safe enough to open up about the big things that you've been holding on to forever. We all got shit we need to heal, right? We've
Right.
just never been subjected to a container that we feel safe enough to open up in. And that's my mission, is to build those containers throughout all men.
So you mentioned like, okay, the emotions was a big thing. What other like stereotypes, like, and we could talk about men overall, but I want to hear more about yours. Like, what stereotypes did you feel like were kind of in your consciousness from society, from your family, et cetera? Like, what were the stereotypes around men and where you came from?
Yeah, so for me, it was they were very negative.
Hmm.
And I'm complete opposite of what I was shown a man should be.
Hmm.
So the main masculine figure I had in my life growing up was my older brother, who's 4 years older. So I was seeing him sell drugs, hurt people, break the law, very disrespectful. You know, so that was what I was shown a masculine man should be. And just like if you ask 10 men what masculinity is, they're going to give you 10 different answers because it's subjective based on what you had growing up as a kid. Now, my father always was in my life, but only every other weekend or once a month because of the courts, and my mom kept him away. So long, you know, that's a whole nother story. But my dad is where I get my heart from. My dad has the absolute biggest heart. He absolutely will help anybody that he can, and he always puts others before himself. So that was who I've always wanted to be at heart, but due to the environment I was in, I wasn't able to tap into that until I was 18, getting out of that environment. And the biggest part for me was actually unlearning the survival techniques I learned once I got out of that environment. So, but yeah, the stereotype was you're a thug, you're a drug dealer, you're disrespectful, you're dangerous. Those were all the stereotypes that were placed onto me. And the community I was in, I was like one, two, there was maybe two or three other white guys in my community. So I grew up predominantly African American community, and it was, you had to earn your rite of passage, and by doing that, it led to doing things that you shouldn't be doing. So again, I was putting on a mask for external acceptance, for external validation. So yeah, never in my truth as a kid. I was never able to be in my truth as a kid. Now I used to look at all this as I'm a victim, all this happened to me, for me, right? But once that mindset flipped and it changed of, no, I'm not a victim. Like, all of this is basically my resume. And what I mean by that is when a man comes to me and he says, or I share about being sexually molested, right? A lot of men don't talk about that because it's embarrassing or it's shameful, whatever label they want to put on. But for me, it's like I can relate. I add weight and depth to that conversation, so I can truly connect with another man when he says how he feels about the situation, versus him trying to talk about it to a man that's never felt that. Right? He doesn't want to go there with them. Right? So that's where the vulnerability comes in, as being and in that space is sharing the things that happen to me. And if I share it in a room with 20 people and it can resonate with 2 people, and now they feel safe enough to talk to me about it because I talked about it first, man, I just helped 2 people.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, because that's the first step, at least, is to start talking about it. It's a huge first step. I mean,
For sure.
Get out of the shadows. So, so what do you find, like, what are some of the common things that you find that men are battling with, that you're working with? Like, what are the main things you would say? What are, like, some of the top ones? Like, what are, like, because of the male stereotypes in part?
The absolute number one is a safe container to show up and be his truth and talk about without judgment. That's why the men's suicide rate's 3 to 1 to women. And usually when it happens, the first thing they say is, I would have never guessed that. I didn't know he was dealing with that.
Right.
And it's because we suffer in silence. And here's what really blows my mind is, you have tier 1 operators, special forces, you got police, fire, military. Every time we train, every time we go into combat, every time we go into a hostile environment, what do we have? A guy next, we have our partner, we have our battle buddy, 2 in, 2 out. We have these things. So when we're dealing with the hardest times of our life, the most dangerous times of our life, we have someone next to us. But then we come home and we choose to do this alone and suffer alone. That doesn't make sense. Because again, it goes back to having that container where you feel like you're not a burden. You're not putting extra stress on your family or your friends. You don't want to be too much, all these things. But really, if you went to your best friend or someone that you felt safe with and you opened up, they would listen. And if they didn't, they're not your person. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's, for me, the number one deal is men not having a safe place to show up. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Not having a safe place to show up where they feel that they can talk about certain things.
Right. Well, it's interesting that men say, you're right. Like, so many men say that. Well, I don't want to, women too, but like, but the emotions say, oh, I don't want to complain or be a burden, or, like, that kind of thing. And I kind of wonder what that's really all about. Like, do you have any deeper perspective on what that really is about? Because is it really that, or is it more of the kind of things we've been talking about? It's just like, I don't want to be seen as weak.
Yeah, I think that's what a lot of it is.
Yeah.
For men to go to their wife and say, I'm struggling, or I'm dealing with this or that. That doesn't happen because societal programming has taught us men have to be the rock and foundation of the family. So never do we want to be seen as weak or broken, especially to the ones that we're supposed to care for and protect, right? So that's, once you can have that communication with your spouse, it's the most beautiful things, because women connect emotionally.
Right.
right? Men, yes, they connect emotionally, but men are more physical. Women connect emotionally. So when a man can come into the relationship and open his heart up emotionally, that's what his wife or his partner is really craving, is that emotional connection. But a lot of times men are shut off from that because they don't want to be perceived as weak or broken to their family. And then a lot of times they don't go to their guy friends because anytime that they've said anything, the jokes are made or something's made fun of. It's not, to me, I have those guys who we joke and stuff, right? But when I go to them and say, "Hey, man, like I need to drop in with you emotionally. I'm working through some shit. I need you to, hold that space for me." All the joking goes away. Like he knows that I
Right.
need that space, right?
Right.
So, and we can do it all. We go roll in jujitsu, shoot guns, and then we can also drop in and be very emotional. So those are the type of men that I keep in mind, the ones that ways and be in alignment to it and hold whatever space I'm needing in that moment.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I think there's a wholeness that men can experience, with being able to go to both of those ends, so to speak. Not that it's that black and white, but like in those different spectrums of energy, there's such a wholeness that you can experience that that I don't that you don't even know exists until you start experiencing it, right? So
Yeah.
that's what's so beautiful. So it's yeah, you're right. There is that idea. Yeah, we've been okay. You got to protect. You got to provide for your family. Even if your wife's making a lot of money and stuff, is like, yeah, but it's up to me ultimately, right? And like that's in the background for most of us.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've got to do it. I've got to make it happen. So that's where, yeah, we can get short and have temper, like, hey, hey, let's I was wondering this, I wondered that. Spouse comes by or they start poking a little bit, and you're like, get off my back, like
Yeah.
and it's because we've built up so much, like we're already like, we've got that going, especially if you're alpha, you're constantly sort of in that sort of energy. And then someone comes poking, and you're like, rah, like to your spouse. And it's
Yeah.
like, they're like, what's your problem? Like,
Well,
and like,
that's where it's in that
yeah,
wounded, or
switch.
when you haven't addressed it, it's
Yeah,
overflowing, right? So
yeah, yeah,
if one comment can trigger you, that tells me that it's been boiling for a while. There's resentment there or whatever. You have to be able to turn off that hyper state, that high
yeah.
octane state of always in protection mode. Like for
Yeah.
me, when I leave my front door, it clicks on, right?
Mhm,
But when I'm in a safe place, my home, around
mhm,
people I trust, like I can turn the dial back down some and I can come back in and be safe and calm. And
mhm.
but my numbers, my family's my number one priority. So of course it's going to be on. But at home, that turns off. I
Yeah.
turn into that cuddly, loving dad, playful husband.
Yeah.
That's what I turn into. But
Yeah.
again, it's being able to tap into both sides of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think, I mean, it's interesting, just thinking about it right now, like when I go to the gym, like, depends on what gym you go to and whatnot. There's a lot of people I don't know in there. So the perceived threat level is higher subconsciously. Like, I know probably it's not really real, right? There's probably not going to be any problems, but the sense of like, wow, what if something happened? What if one of these guys gave me a hard time? What if so? Who knows what could happen? The perceived
Yeah.
threat level goes up until you're like hyper vigilant. You tend to be, I'm not one of those intimidating looking guys at all, but like just the opposite. But okay, I could get it. I could get in that mode, but it starts coming over you, and it's an interesting experience. And of course, you could be relaxed too at times, but that energy comes up in certain environments, or you're somewhere where you don't, you're walking through a parking lot somewhere you've never been with your family before. You're like, all right, is there any problems around here? I'm ready for you. Like that's
Yeah.
somewhere in your brain, like, and it's something I don't, because a lot of women will be listening to this. So it's like they probably are aware of that, but maybe they don't realize like that is just like an automatic instinctive kind of thing, I believe, for men, like it's just something that turns on. It does create this extra tension that we're constantly working with.
Yeah, and I think it's good to have that, but it's
Yeah,
also, in my opinion, it's unhealthy to it be shown. Like for me, when I go out, I look like, I am having fun with the family, but I'm also very aware. So for me, it's like
right.
I'm a duck in water. My
Mhm.
mind is going 100 miles an hour because I'm assessing every threat, soft targets, the perimeter, how many
Right.
exits when we go in. Like I'm assessing all that,
Right.
but I don't let it consume the outer body. I'm not walking
Right.
around,
Right.
like this. It's like you can still analyze and assess
Right.
without it being shown.
Right.
When you
Right.
walk into a place, like your presence will be felt and you
Right.
can feel what's going on, but
Yeah.
you have to enjoy life. You can't let that take over you, right? And
Yeah.
take away your happiness and joy. Like I'm very alert, but
Yeah.
I've been able to balance it of where I'm still out having fun, smiling and
Yeah.
joking, but I'm still analyzing and assessing what's going on.
Because there are guys at the gym you see like that, they look like that almost the whole time they're in there, like, like,
Yeah.
like a constant scowl on their face almost or something, like say, maybe if one of their buddies comes by, then they relax finally. But but if they talk to anybody, but yeah, I'm just saying, like yeah, you're totally right. Like that's kind of like what I call like the enlightened hunter energy or whatever. Like you're present, like yeah, you're aware of everything. You're probably 100 times more effective even in that sort of energy. You're more fully centered and aligned in your masculine and your feminine and everything, right? And
Yeah.
kind of get into that deeper state. And yeah, that's the sweet spot for sure. But I don't know. Maybe it's not true for you, but I think like sometimes we rise up, like we come out of that center, and like also there's a little sharpness, and then we dip down, and it's just kind of like, oh, I'm not worried about anything, and we get like maybe we're too noodly, like you know what I mean, like oh, yeah, I'm just chill, totally. Like sometimes that's not appropriate either, right? Like,
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah, if we all got hit, oh well, I guess it'd be not the end of the world. I don't like, I'm saying it's all subconscious. It's not like literally the thoughts, but like there's something like,
Yeah.
oh, we're okay. Kind of
Well,
numb.
you want to be able to find that balance.
Yeah, yeah,
If you're way up here and you're hyper vigilant, and then some days you're right here, like you want to find that happy balance where it may be like
yeah,
this at first, but then as you
yeah,
find that balance, your
right,
wavelength
right.
kind of centers out, and it's like, oh, this is my
Yeah.
baseline right here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's well put. So, yeah, so that's great. So, how do you help people like it sounds like the people you work with more so are people already are fine with being tough or whatever, like giving in their energy and more so I don't know, is that true, or there's a vary, all right, some of them more like, no, I'm a teddy bear, I can't seem to access my mouth alpha, or I'm
Yeah.
curious. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm with both. Like when I do my retreats, I love it because I'll get very masculine men that have never tapped into the emotional, but
Mhm.
then they're paired together with very emotional men that have never tapped into their masculine. And like the first day, we do combatives, jujitsu, pistol. Like we do very masculine things, axe throwing, do all these
Mhm.
physical things. And it's funny because all the masculine men, they'll excel in that. And they're like, "Oh yeah, I feel good." And then the feminine men, so to say, get to
Okay.
step up and rise in that, and the
Yeah.
masculine are cheering them on. So they're getting to feel that empowerment, right? And step
Right.
away with new skills that they learn. So it's
Yeah.
empowering the masculine.
Yeah.
But then day two, the feminine guys get to step in and be like, hey, you big masculine dude, let me introduce you to meditation and breath work. And then have the masculine dudes just crying.
Right, right,
It's beautiful
right,
because we get to
right,
tap into both sides, and
right.
they get to help each other. And it's a beautiful harmony because in the real world, so to say, these two people would have never talked. They would have never
Right.
met. But now they just bonded, and they're probably going to be friends for a long time because they let down the walls and they opened up their heart to something that they've never done before.
Right, because yeah, I mean, I know it's me being more on the emotional side of that. It's like, even though I've done martial arts, I would do weightlifting, I do all those things, but at the same time, like I'm coming more from the emotional side as a foundation, and it's like, yeah, like if someone's like too alpha, I'm like, screw it, I don't want to talk to him. Like, forget it. Like I like the
Yeah.
distant part of me, right? And then if the and so yeah, I can see what you're saying. Like the two would probably never connect, like
Right.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I mean, if you had this tier one operator, super masculine, done some awesome things in life, and you're partnered with him, and y'all just went through some, combatives on the ground rolling, and he took his time. He was gentle, very helpful, and informative to you, and like taught you new things. You would feel empowered. You would feel good. You'd feel connected to him, right?
True.
But then you got to hold space for this awesome dude in an emotional way, and help him tap into his heart center, and help him work through things. Like, that's a connection that's unspeakable, that is beautiful, right? So it's that's what it's about.
Amazing. Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay, great. Well, so as we're wrapping up, I mean, we're just having a conversation here, but any last, words? I could talk for hours with you on these subjects, right? So, but yeah, any last words for people today you think would be helpful to them? We've talked about a lot of stuff, but I'm wondering if you have any last words.
Now, for me, I think it's just, being able to go into that dark place to actually confront and face the things that you needed to do to get to where you want to be. And I think if you can do a friends check, a circle check, and just really see and analyze who you surround yourself with, and what they bring forth, what containers they bring forth, and just finding that space that you can authentically be yourself and help you guide and work through emotionally what you need to work through, men and women both.
Yeah. Well, that's great. That's great. Well, this is really awesome. I super appreciate you and the work you're doing in the world. And so, we've had people on, they don't do, they don't lead men's stuff at all. And they've had incredible things to share as well. And it's interesting to hear, someone that's, in the space working with men to share all the things you did today was amazing too. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you.
All right, likewise. Thank you for listening in to Just Two Conscious Guys Talking, where our mission is to impact millions of men ultimately to deepen their awakening by examining their consciousness of what's been unfolding for them with male stereotypes and programming that has allowed them to have opportunities to evolve during these times. It's an exciting time to bring more love to men and women around the world, and we are grateful for you tuning in today. Feel free to share this episode and keep tuning in, and also look in the show notes for a link to get notifications of future episodes. Until the next time, everyone, goodbye for now.